So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jude Taylor. I'm the Chief Exec of Together Active. I'm delighted to have so many of us here on the call today. As some of you might be aware, we launched our strategy Step Up back in April of this year. And really at the heart of that strategy was a commitment to dedicating our resources and our attention to people that need us most. And what we have done is we started to understand that inactivity exists in a higher degree with people with long-term health conditions, and particularly people with mental health conditions. We also understand that there is this massive body of evidence that suggests that positive physical activity behaviours can be a really effective tool in preventing and recovering and rehabilitating from some mental health conditions. So we're really keen as a sector to explore our place in mental health and how we collectively can do more to support people with mental health conditions. Since the emergence of COVID-19, there's been widespread concern about mental health conditions. The effect of lockdown and pandemic has been hard for people. We've lost contact with families and friends. We've experienced job losses, homeschooling. We've been denied access to leisure centres and swimming pools and gyms, all of which are mechanisms that many of us use to cope with our everyday lives. So it's been unsurprising then that we've seen a huge increase in common mental health conditions. Indeed, there was a survey done before the pandemic started between June 2019 and March 2020, which suggested around 10% of adults were struggling with moderate to severe levels of depression. 12 months later, spanning the period of that first year of the pandemic, that figure had increased to 19%. A survey by Young Minds questioned 13 to 25-year-olds, and 80% of those young people reported that the pandemic had had a negative impact on their mental health. It's clear then that this is something that we are going to have to deal with into our future. And it's also clear to me, given the response to today's call, that there is a commitment from us as a sector to do more. I'm hoping that today can be the starting point for a discussion around how we can make physical activity and sport more accessible to people with mental health conditions, about how as a sector we can improve our knowledge and our understanding, and how we can better connect to colleagues in services. So I'm really excited to get those discussions started today and to be on this journey with you. And I think, as I said at the top of the call, it's just so encouraging that we've had such a big response to today's call. So without further ado, I'm really excited to welcome our first speakers, Zoe Brown and Ryan Smith, who have been reassured that are the Ant and Det of mental health. So I'm really delighted to welcome them to the call today. And I'll hand over to you for our first presentation of the day.
Oh, thank you very much. Would it be okay, Jude, if you made us or made me host so that I can share our presentation? Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So we always forget, Zoe. Should we start by introducing ourselves?
That's a really good idea, Ryan.
Okay. So my name's Ryan Smith. I work for North Staff's Mind, and I manage a project for children and young people called Speak Up Space. So it's an online instant messaging service that it's an anonymous service that young people can access 7 evenings a week and just chat about anything that they're struggling with.
So my name's Zoe Brown. I manage the MACAS project. We go into schools and we raise awareness of mental health. We work with young people from year 5 right up into 6th form and beyond. The idea is the earlier we can get people talking about mental health, the easier it is, the more normal it becomes. And we do talk about, it's interesting that you've just mentioned the link between physical health and mental health, and just generally about our well-being. I also work alongside Rye on the Speak Up Space project as well. So today we're going to be talking about mental health awareness. We've tried to make this as interactive as we can, because obviously we're aware we're all on Zoom and it'd be quite different if it was face-to-face. So we just wanted to check if you all know where your reaction buttons are. So what question were we going to ask, Rye?
I always go with, like, who's brushed the teeth this morning? Can you find the yes or no button? Obviously, hopefully most people will be clicking yes. There's a tick gone up straight away. Jude's on it.
Oh, well, there's a few people, few thumbs up as well.
Thumbs up as well. We're happy with that.
Well, everybody's brushed their teeth even though we're on Zoom. I'm impressed.
Yeah, you believe them? I'm not sure.
Wow. We can't see them.
I mean,
okay.
I am saying that you and I haven't reacted to that, but never mind.
Oh, that's true. Okay. So you can all find those buttons. That's fantastic.
At some point through the presentation as well, we're going to be kind of running some polls, but we'll tell you when to do that. So something will just come up on your screen and you just need to click an answer that you think's the right answer for that. Okay.
Absolutely. Does everybody know where the chat box is? Can we just check that? I don't think we use that too often.
No,
but just in case you've got any questions.
Times as well. So again, you need to be, even though your camera's off, try and listen. I'm really good at that, honest.
Oh, there's some emojis coming through. I'm loving it.
Awesome. We're happy with that. Okay. Should we get going?
Absolutely. Okay. So what is this training going to cover today then? Obviously, it's a 45-minute whistle-stop tour of mental health. We do offer a half-a-day training workshop if you wanted a more in-depth talk about kind of mental health and mental health awareness, but we're going to try and squeeze as much in as we can, aren't we, Rye, into today?
It's that 45 minutes we've got this morning. So the things we're going to cover today are...
What is mental health and mental well-being?
Why is mental health important?
Mental health and life expectancy.
Self-help kind of resources that you might use.
And further help and resources. Okay then, so what is mental health? So using your chat box then, we want to know what mental health means to you. Don't worry about being right or wrong, just have a go. Give us an idea about what you think it is. And I think it will demonstrate what a broad spectrum it is and how everybody's got kind of a slightly different view.
It means different things to different people, doesn't it, always? Okay, an unsafe state of mind someone's offered there.
Okay, fantastic. How are you feeling? I like that one.
I really like that one. Mental well-being on a sliding scale. Yeah, absolutely.
State of mind, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Feelings and thoughts. Acid-based.
Well, yeah.
Acid-based thinking. Okay, so we've got an idea then of what you all think. Oh, so there's a few more.
Yeah, there's quite a lot coming through now.
Absolutely. The health of your mental well-being is just as important as physical health. Absolutely. And they impact each other quite a lot. Okay, then. So let's go for our definition then, right? Some brilliant answers there. Thanks, everybody, for having a go as well.
This is quite wordy, isn't it? So let's kind of read it. Mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential. They can cope with the normal stresses of life. They can work productively and fruitfully and are able to make a contribution to his or her own community. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. We were talking before, weren't we, Zoe? I think that's quite a wordy answer. That's obviously come kind of from a trusted source. We like to break it down, thinking about the work we do with children and young people. We like to break it down into a series of feelings. You know, sometimes you feel kind of better than other days. So it's about feeling positive sometimes, not feeling quite as positive other times, more difficult feelings. And overall, it's how we manage those feelings and how we cope with those feelings.
Fantastic. I was just reading a couple of questions there, but I know you've already got the answer. Okay. So mental ill health then, what do we mean? So it's more than a temporary state of mind that adversely affects your ability to function on a day-to-day basis. And that's a quote from Mind. So what do we mean by it then? So mental health is something that affects everybody. It's what we feel when we feel down or stressed or frightened. Most of the times those feelings will pass, but sometimes they kind of continue for a prolonged period of time and they become more serious. It can happen to absolutely anybody. Nobody is immune.
Absolutely not. So remembering that is quite important, that everyone's different, and what somebody may be able to take in the stride, the next person might find more difficult, but maybe that person can take a different thing, can manage a different thing quite easily, but the first person won't be able to. It's different for everyone. It's quite fluid, isn't it?
Your mental health doesn't always stay the same. Like Rai says, it's really fluid. It can change just as your circumstances change and as you move through different stages of your life.
I'd even say it's on a daily basis. This time you might feel really, really good in the morning and then something could happen. And by the afternoon, you're not feeling quite as positive. Maybe you're struggling a little bit more. So it's quite a fluid thing. So what we're going to do now is in the chat box, to put think about yourself or somebody that you care about or somebody that you know. What kind of feelings would lead you to think you or somebody else is struggling with their mental health? So what types of feelings? So I'm going to throw one out there, that a lot of the young people that we support can feel anxious quite a lot. So anxiety might be a feeling that would lead you to think someone was struggling a little bit. You give us some of your suggestions there. Stress, 100%, yeah.
Absolutely.
Distance, being quiet, overworked. God, they're coming through really, really quick.
They are. Feeling worthless, feeling nervous, unhappy, paranoia, loneliness, not being able to perform things you would normally be able to do. Absolutely, that's a really good kind of indicator and think that something's not quite right.
Absolutely.
Can you see some, Ryan?
Yeah, behaving recklessly, nothing to look forward to. So again, not feeling like there's anything positive coming up and kind of struggling with those feelings. So like I said, I was really impressed. We weren't sure what was going to come back then. Not looking after yourselves as well. Yeah, so maybe you can see someone not taking care of even their appearance or taking care of the kind of hygiene, those kinds of things. Feeling sick, that can be an indicator of a lot of things. I know a lot of the young people that we work with will express that, feeling nauseous, feeling sick, and it might be anxiety, it might be kind of worry, it might be those kinds of things that's coming through.
Okay, so all of those fantastic ideas, and I know we didn't get to read all of them out. It's so good that everybody's kind of participating and joining in. So with that in mind, we want you to kind of consider this question. So a poll's going to come up on your screen. From what I understand, you've seen this happen, haven't you, Ryan? Because I've been controlling it. You will have a question and you will be able to answer it and it will disappear. Is that about right, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question in the poll is, who would feel able to admit that they have a mental health problem? Either yes or no. There, it's up on my screen there. So it could just be admitting it to yourself. It's not necessarily admitting it to someone else. The first thing is basically admitting that you've got an issue or a struggle. Okay.
Wow, okay. It's quite good because I can see what you're all answering.
Or have you got the kind of results of the poll?
I've got the results. We'll just give you another kind of like 10 seconds. I think most people have answered. I'm really impressed. Okay, so I will share with you all then now. So you should all be able to see now, 33 people answered. 97% of you would feel able to admit that you've got a mental health problem, and 3% of you wouldn't. So that's quite a high percentage. Perhaps that's because you're willing to attend a conference like you have today, or maybe you work in this field. So 97% of us would feel able to admit that we've got a mental health problem. Okay.
What I think is really important at this stage, so, is if you don't feel able to admit that, you don't feel bad about that. It's maybe something that you're not ready to do at this moment in time. I know a time in my kind of past when I would not have been able to admit that. I would not have been able to kind of share those feelings or even think about those kind of things. So it doesn't mean because you don't feel able to now that you won't be able to at some point in the future. It's not a bad thing. Okay.
Absolutely. So then the next part of this question then, you should be able to see that now.
Yeah. Would you feel able to share with someone that you had a mental health problem? So if you were feeling that way, would you be able to tell somebody else? It might be somebody in your somebody that you really trust in your family or your friendship group, or would you be able to tell a professional who, would you feel able to tell someone?
And there's been kind of a comment that it'd be more easier to admit to yourself that you've got a mental health problem than it would to others. I really like that. That's a really good point. Okay, so I think everybody's just about answered. Okay, so I share those results with you. So slightly less, so 94% of you would feel able to share with somebody else that you had a mental health problem, whereas 6% of you wouldn't. I guess that's all about who you would choose to share it with, because that will vary from person to person.
It might even vary at different points in your life. So, you may be in a really strong relationship where you trust that person to share that thing, and then things may break down and then you might not have that person in your life. So, or vice versa. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, and then the last part of this poem.
Would you feel able to seek support for a mental health problem? So, let's think about, would you actually then be able to approach a professional and say, I really need some help, I'm not coping, and I'm really struggling. So.
Wow, this is quite interesting. Okay, just give you a few more seconds, those of you to kind of haven't answered yet.
You're quite enjoying being in control of all
I
these
am.
results,
I'm loving
aren't
it.
you,
It's
though?
like,
Yeah.
like I've got the secret. Okay, so I shall share these results with you then. Interestingly, 74% of you would feel able to seek support with a mental health problem. However, that's 20% less than people that would feel able to admit that they've got a mental health problem. 26% of people wouldn't feel able to seek support. And I think that's quite interesting, even in the field that we're in. Actually, we'd find it really hard to seek some support. Maybe it's you don't know where to seek support from. Maybe it's about that stigma, about what people will think. And we go on to talk a little bit about that, don't we, in a little while, Ryan?
Absolutely. And the impact that that might have you on you personally or professionally, the relationships and what people will be like with you, you know, it's all those kinds of things that factor in. And that's one of the things that we aim to do with the work that we do, is break down that stigma and say, you know what, owning and accessing that support is okay. It's okay to need that support. It's okay to work through those things with someone, but it's a big step to take. I do understand that.
Absolutely. And maybe if you do work with people that are kind of either struggling with the mental health or just work with people generally, it's actually something really useful to remember how difficult it is and how you perhaps felt when you were considering those questions. Okay, so what is mental well-being then? So mental well-being describes your mental state and how you are feeling and how well you can cope with day-to-day life.
Our mental well-being is dynamic, so it's changing. It can change from moment to moment, day to day, month to month, or even year to year. There's lots of different things that can kind of impact it.
So if you have good mental well-being, it's suggested that you're able to kind of feel quite confident, you have quite positive self-esteem.
You feel able to express a range of emotions, even if that's kind of sadness or upset. You feel able to own those kind of emotions and share them with people. You can maintain that connection with people and those relationships and just feel engaged with everything that's going on around you.
You can live and work productively, and generally you can cope with the stresses of daily life.
And this is a big thing for this last 18 months. You're able to adapt and manage in times of change and uncertainty. So I don't think anyone could have foreseen what's happened with the pandemic and how that's impacted just every aspect of day-to-day life. Some people have been able to kind of roll with that, and they've been able to get by. Other people have found that really, really challenging.
And I guess that's the difference between mental ill health and mental well-being. So we've all got mental well-being, but when it becomes mental ill health is when you start struggling to do some of those things. Okay. So mental health and well-being, there's a spectrum then, like there is for lots of different things. So if we look at this first part of the spectrum, we've got at one end, you've got no symptoms of mental illness, you're absolutely fine. And the other end, you've got lots of symptoms and the quite severe symptoms of mental illness.
We also have this vertical axis as well. So at the bottom, you're languishing in that mental well-being. So maybe you're not really kind of coping. On the other end, right at the top there, you're flourishing, you're feeling good and you're doing well. You feel like you can achieve the things that you want to achieve.
So ideally, we'd like to be here. So you've got high well-being, you're feeling confident, you're feeling positive, you kind of got really good self-esteem, and you've got no symptoms of mental illness at all.
And on the flip side of that, you're still able to function, so your well-being's okay, but you are experiencing those symptoms of mental illness. So that happens for quite a lot of us. I can own that, you know, I'm getting by, I'm doing everything, I feel okay, but actually I'm aware that there's things under the surface that just don't feel quite as good. And
we'll talk about some of the causes that might affect how you're feeling in a little while as well. So then I guess where we don't want to be is the low well-being. So you've got no confidence, you've got no self-esteem, but on top of that, you've got all of these kind of symptoms of mental illness, and you might need some support to help you when you're at that point. Well, I guess you definitely would.
And then there is even this part of the axis where you've got kind of low well-being. So maybe that's something to do with kind of your physical health and all those kinds of things, but actually that's not impacting your mental health. So you've got no symptoms of mental illness, or maybe, I don't know if I've confused this slightly, or maybe it's the fact that you're not able to kind of display those kind of symptoms of mental illness. Maybe you're covering them up, things like that.
Or perhaps you haven't got any, but you couldn't maintain that for very long.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do some true or false questions with you now. So those yes and no buttons or your thumbs up buttons, if you use those for these statements, and we'll find out a little bit of what everybody thinks. It's okay if you don't, if something's true and you say that it's false, that's absolutely fine. It's more important to have a go, and hopefully we'll all learn something.
I think that's the thing.
Sorry, Ryan. Mental health problems are rare. So thumbs up or a yes button if you think mental health problems are rare. Thumbs down or the no button if you think they aren't rare. Is that right, Ryan?
If you think this is false, a statement.
Thanks. Okay, so a few people think it's false. A few people think it's true. Let's have a look. It is false. Mental health problems aren't rare. They're actually quite common. We'll all experience them at some point in our lives.
I think at this point, it's really important to kind of underline that a mental health problem, some people view mental health as it has to be really serious, you know, it has to be a really, really big thing. And it does involve those as well. But sometimes you might feel a bit nervous, you might feel a bit anxious, you might just be kind of feeling like you don't want to connect with someone, you don't want to speak up. All those are kind of factors of your mental health. So that, you know, there's different grades and different scales of mental health issues. So this next one, people with mental health problems are violent. Is that true or false? So a thumbs up if you think it's true, a thumbs down if you think it's false.
Okay. So quite a few people think that it's false. A couple of people think that it's true.
I just read, I saw one of the thumbs up, and then I thought, actually, reading the statement, I can see the confusion. Some people with mental health problems may be violent, you know, so we've not said everybody with a mental health problem. So yeah, there's a bit of a misleading statement, I think.
I also think we need to make sure that we remind people to put the thumbs up or thumbs down in between questions.
Yeah,
okay.
That'll help.
So people can recover from a mental illness. Is that true or is that false? Oh, my options aren't working on my screen. There we are. So most people, yeah, think that that's true.
At this point, I'm going to share, so that I'm glad I'm not in charge of all this kind of feeding back the answers and stuff. I think it'd fry my brain if I was supposed to be doing that as well all my days.
So absolutely, you can recover from a mental illness. Just because you're finding something difficult now, you can recover from it. It might take a while, but you absolutely can recover from it.
On average, people with a mental health problem die younger than people without. This is quite interesting, is it?
It was. So, we were surprised with this one, weren't we, Ryan?
So thumbs up if you think that's true, thumbs down if you think it's false.
Okay, so there's quite a lot of people that think that that's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is true, and we were actually quite surprised at that, weren't we, Ryan?
We were, but then at the same time, I think it underlines just the importance of kind of looking after your mental health and finding those kind of coping strategies and those techniques that help us to kind of stay on that kind of level that's okay. So yeah, it's quite a shocking statement, that really.
The stigma and discrimination around mental illness can be just as limiting as the illness itself. So is that true or is that false? Absolutely. So lots of people there are saying that that's true. Definitely. The stigma and discrimination can be just as bad or sometimes worse than actually the mental illness itself.
Excellent. And that stigma is the thing that'll stop you kind of accessing the support sometimes, which will then have that knock-on effect again. Another one here, there is not much you can do to help a friend or colleague experiencing mental ill health. Is that true or false?
Yep, so quite a lot of you think that that's false. Absolutely.
100%. This is something that we share constantly. We go into schools, we do a lot of kind of work with kind of young people, and we always kind of share that thing, just being heard sometimes, just knowing that somebody's noticed that you're not okay, just having somebody that wants to listen and just check in with you. That can be a massive difference to somebody who's struggling with a mental health. People who have mental ill health cannot work. Is that true or false?
Absolutely. I think the majority of you, false, definitely. Might even put false up on the board as well, Ryan.
Work. Yeah, like I say, I mean, I don't mind sharing that over the years I've had periods where I've been struggling with something. You know, it's one of the reasons that led me into this sector. But I was still able to function. I was still able to kind of hold down my work and kind of perform in a way that was acceptable enough for what I was doing. So.
Okay, so hopefully that's kind of maybe surprised you, maybe confirmed some of the things that you knew, but it's just a good idea to get an understanding of what people think. Okay. Oh. So how common then is mental ill health? So 1 in 6 people will experience a mental health problem each year. We actually think that it's higher, and I think the statistics that are kind of about that suggest it's 1 in 4 people, but actual official statistics from the NHS suggest that 1 in 6 people will experience a mental health problem each year.
The prevalence of common mental health problems has risen 20% since 1993 in both men and women. So you can see that, again, that statistic's quite outdated. So back in 2016, that was the official NHS statistic, that it had risen 20% in that period. However, we're still not sure. We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but this last 18 months, the pandemic, we've noticed with our service users the impact that it's had on their mental health. So just what kind of impact is that going to have moving forward? The statistics won't come out for about another year, 12 months, 18 months, yeah, something like that.
So 40% of GP appointments involve mental health. So that's nearly half of all GPs appointments involve mental health. And like we've just said, I suspect that's probably gone up since the pandemic now.
And nearly half of adults, so 43%, report that they've experienced a common mental health problem at some point. This is quite an interesting statistic that we'll cover again later. You're laughing at me trying to say statistic. I feel like I've got a stutter now. So 35% of men and 51% of women. But we have reason to believe that the statistics are maybe a bit skewed for the genders there.
So the severity of the pandemic's impact on mental health has increased. We know that it's kind of increased that demand that's out there. Nearly a third of adults and over a third of young people with mental health problems said their mental health has got much worse since March 2020. This is more than double the amount who told us this last year.
So somebody's just asked a question there. So what is considered a common mental health condition?
It's a really good question, and I guess different people would kind of class it as different things. I guess it's things like stress, anxiety, depression, those sorts of things.
Feeling low, feeling sad, those kinds of things that impact your ability to kind of function on a day-to-day basis. You may be able to function with them, but they need to be managed, or you need to have techniques to help you get through them. Yeah. Over half of people receiving benefits told us that their mental health was currently poor in comparison to just over a third of people who are not receiving benefits. This group were also much less likely to feel hopeful about their future. So again, sometimes it can help to kind of think of things to look forward to and all those kinds of things. And when people are in that situation, maybe they've got less of those kind of strategies that can help pull them through.
And then just under 9 in 10 young people have said that loneliness has made their mental health worse during the pandemic. So that's a staggering amount of young people. Without
breaching any kind of confidentiality or anything like that, just looking generally on my service, like I say, we kind of support young people 7 nights a week. But during that pandemic, it was that lack of connection. Even if they were on devices and they were able to kind of FaceTime or they were able to message their friends, it was that lack of actual connection and meeting their kind of peers, meeting their kind of their friendship groups and things like that were making it even more difficult for them to cope during the pandemic.
Okay then, so causes of mental health issues. So in your chat box, what do you think are some of the causes of mental health issues? You've all been so good so far. I think they've come up with more ideas than we've got on our slides.
Absolutely, yeah.
Loneliness.
I saw loss, money worries, stress, social media, absolutely.
Loss of job, bereavement, breakdown of relationship, alcohol, society, upbringing.
Relationship problems there, trauma, chemical imbalance, yeah, that's one that's on our list, absolutely. Expectations, definitely.
Physical injury, absolutely. Mental trauma, definitely.
Guilt, that's an interesting one, absolutely.
Stress, definitely. So you've got loads and loads, and I'm sure that's kind of only like the tip of the iceberg. We'll share some of our examples, but I think you've probably got more than we have. Physical pain, absolutely trying to cope with that physical pain can really kind of impact your mental health, and I think it's sometimes underestimated. So some of the main ones that we've got then. Sorry, Rai, were you going to say something?
It'll wait.
So like you guys said, chemical changes in the brain, that's one of them.
Life events, so that you brought this up, so relationship breakdowns, bereavement, losing your job, actually retiring, I know that's happened to a family member of mine, redundancy, those kinds of things.
Trauma as a child or as an adult.
Absolutely. Substance misuse. Now, we kind of wonder sometimes whether that's what can cause a mental health issue or whether the mental health issue causes the kind of substance misuse. It's quite an interesting subject.
Loneliness and isolation, absolutely never more than the last kind of 18 months, regardless of age. I know our statistics focused on young people, but I think that impacted lots and lots of kind of age groups.
Being or feeling different. So again, we all want to, I think it's a human kind of desire to feel like you belong to something or feel like you're part of something, even if it's a smaller group, but feeling different can be quite challenging.
Family history, so there might be kind of something where it's hereditary perhaps, or it's learned behaviour because mom or dad or grandparents have been that way.
And you also mentioned this physical ill health, so like you say, it might not just be what that physical incapacity stops you from doing, but like you say, it might be the pain that's associated with that and the fact that you can't get that kind of respite from that pain, and that can impact your mental health. I think overall, this is what I was going to say before, thinking about the list of things that you came up with as well as our list there, it's the absolute diversity of things that can kind of generate those struggles with your mental health. And it just shows that just one little thing can be the trigger. And again, this is where early intervention really, really helps, is when something happens, try and seek support with it as soon as you can, you know. And support might just be telling someone that you trust, you know, getting their opinion on it, sharing those things. Yeah, I think it's really important.
We go on to talk about some of those ways to cope and where to access support later on in the PowerPoint as well, don't we, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely.
So mental health and life expectancy then. So we're going to do a poll again now. So does mental health have the same effect on life expectancy as smoking, obesity or alcoholism? I should have let you read that one, right? Why I just get the poll up on the screen.
Yeah, do you want to grab it up? So yeah, so you'll have three choices. So does mental health have that impact on your life expectancy? So is it the same as smoking, obesity or addiction?
And again, don't worry about being right or wrong, just in your head what you think that it might be.
I think some of the ones that are coming up are quite surprising, aren't they, Jo?
Absolutely. Okay, just give you another couple of seconds for those of you that have not quite had a chance to answer.
Do you reckon they're making a brew?
Oh, definitely. Wow, okay. So I'll end the poll there and I'll share the results with you. So 43% of people think that smoking has the same effect on life, mental illness has the same effect on life expectancy as smoking. 33% of you think obesity does. Smoking and obesity were kind of up there quite a bit when you first started answering. They were kind of quite close. And 23% of you think addiction. Okay. So she says, so mental illness has the same effect on life expectancy as smoking, but more of an effect than obesity. And like Ryan mentioned earlier on, we haven't included alcoholism in that because we don't know whether alcoholism comes first or the mental health problem comes first. And there's quite a bit of a debate on that, and different people think different things. But we were it was quite staggering, wasn't it, right, to learn that, you know, mental health has the same effects on life expectancy as smoking does, and more of an effect than obesity.
Yeah, that is really, really shocking as a statistic, I think. I'm going to stop saying that word. So we're not doing the poll on this, that's right, are we? So we're going to share this figure in a moment. I'm going to use figure from now on. So how many people do you think die worldwide by suicide each year? And the answer is over 1 million people die by suicide worldwide. Global suicide rates have increased 60% in the last 45 years. And again, we're talking about that figure was published in 2016. So after the pandemic, has that been increased? I would hazard a guess, yes. But like I said, we're not going to get those results for another couple of years, I wouldn't think.
Okay. So we're going to do another poll for this one. Are men or women in England more likely to have a mental health problem? I was prepared that time, Ryan.
So yeah, so click your answer there, and then Zoe can tot up those results.
I forget you can't all see the results that they're coming through.
I'm so glad you're leading on. Well, everyone would have left by now if I were doing the tech side of this, believe me.
Oh, okay. I'll just give you another couple of seconds. Oh. Feel like I'm building the drama up. I feel like
building the tension, yeah.
Bit of what is it? Deck, aren't we? We'll tell you after the ad break. Okay. Oh, it's gone back to it. So this is why I said, ooh, it's exactly 50-50.
Wow.
It went to that, and then somebody answered and it changed it a little bit, and then somebody else answered. So it's back at 50-50. So we think that it's an equal split of who's more likely to have a mental health problem. Okay.
What we're going to share with that, though, is in England, women are more likely than men to have a common mental health problem and are more likely to make a suicide attempt now. So 8% of women compared to 5% of men. However, in 2019, 5,691 suicides were recorded in the UK. It's the highest rate since 2002. And of these, around 75%, so that's 4,933, were male. So are you going to explain there, so kind of, because obviously we're saying that women are more likely to have the mental health problems, and the suicide rate in women is actually, or the suicide attempts is higher in women than it is in men, yet there's more men dying as a result of taking their own life.
Has anybody got any idea why you think that might be? Why you think there's more kind of completed suicides by men than there is by women, if you want to use the chat box. Okay.
Really switched on group.
So the method of how they choose to take their own life. Then we've got women might be more likely to ask for help. We've got the stigma, absolutely. We're stubborn and don't open up. I like that one. Men don't access services as much. Men, it's not so easy to open up. Absolutely. So you're right on all counts of that. Kind of generally, and obviously this doesn't count for everybody, it is harder for men to kind of say that they're struggling and want to access that support. But actually the reason that there's more completed suicides is of exactly what you guys said. It's the method that they use. So it's more final. They might be more inclined to potentially go in front of a train or have access to things that make it more final. Or you explain this one quite well, right?
So yeah, like I say, so generally, and obviously it's not for every case, but generally kind of female suicide attempts, it tends to be things like overdoses, it tends to be things like kind of maybe cutting themselves. And obviously if support gets to them soon enough, you can kind of survive those kind of attempts. So if you can get the kind of the care in time, if you discover and you get the care in time, then you can actually survive an attempt. Whereas things like obviously jumping in front of a train, access to firearms and things like that, the actual, it's very, very final. Even if you are discovered, it's unlikely that you're going to survive an attempt like that. So
quite a knowledgeable group though, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So there has been a statistically significant increase in numbers of suicides in the last 2 years. This is the first increase in what has been a decline since 2013. This may, in part, be due to a change in the burden of proof from the criminal standard in July 2018.
So again, we're looking at that figure, I'll use the word figure, it's from 2020. So again, we're not talking about the last couple of years with the pandemic. So, and all it was is maybe prior to 2018, suicides in some instances would be recorded as an open verdict, but that kind of, the guidelines for classifying something as somebody taking their own life changed. So that maybe caused that increase there.
Okay, so we're going to talk about work-related stress, depression and anxiety. So we're going to ask for your participation again.
You're keeping them on the toes, keeping them out of that kitchen getting a brew, aren't you?
Okay, so how many workers in a 12-month period suffered from work-related stress, anxiety and depression? So is it 455,000? 695,000 or 325,000?
I know the answers though.
Do you?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So just give you another couple of seconds. I think most people have answered. Okay, so it's between two of them. So we've got 76% of you think that it's 695,000 and 24% of you think that it's 455,000 and nobody thinks it's as low as 325,000. So this group's spot on.
Yeah, absolutely.
595,000 workers suffered from work-related stress, depression or anxiety, and those figures are based from 2017 to 2018.
That one answers though.
Was it not?
So we were
it
all
wasn't.
wrong.
I put 695,000. Apologies.
So is this another poll, so?
Yeah, would anybody have noticed though, right, if you hadn't pointed to his
I'm
house?
on the ball, you see. Not my PowerPoint.
Yeah, this is another poll.
So how many working days were lost in a 12-month period due to work-related stress, anxiety and depression? So is it 10.5 million days, 5.6 million or 15.4 million? I've forgotten the answer to this one. So.
Well, let's see if these answers match up.
We can but hope, you know.
Okay, so we'll just give you another couple of seconds. So we've got 53% of you think it's 10.5 million, 19% of you think it's 5.6 million, and 48% of you think that it's 15.4 million. It's quite staggering, this one is. Oh. So it's actually 15.4 million days are lost due to work-related stress, depression and anxiety in 12 months. And again, that was from 2017 to 2018. And
I think this gives us a bigger impression of kind of mental health and the importance of it, because it's not just kind of the impact that it has on the individual, it's not the impact it has on the people that care about them, so the family and friends and all those kinds of things, but it's even having this kind of impact on the economy as well. Do you know what I mean? So the world as a whole, it's yeah, it's quite staggering, really.
So they account for 44% of work are ill health cases, and 57% of days lost due to ill health, so almost 50%.
And causes of this include workload that you kind of put under at work, the deadlines and how tight those deadlines can be, being given too much work and too much responsibility. I think we kind of speak to people quite a lot that don't get that right level of support. Do you know what I mean? Be that at work, be that at school, anything like that. Organizational change and that uncertainty. So how kind of secure is your job? How secure is your future? Yeah.
Okay, so when we're thinking about stress, we're going to move on to what actually is stress. So stress is the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressure or other types of demand placed on them.
Yes, just reading a question. Yeah.
Me too. Absolutely, yeah. I wonder how much these figures have changed with people working from home. So potentially would they have gone down because people are working from home, so they kind of just soldier on through? It's a lot harder, isn't it, to say I'm not fit for work when you can kind of work from the comfort of perhaps your own sofa. So I think it'll be quite interesting.
I think there's a lot to be said as well, because I think it's a really interesting point. I think there's a lot to be said for the people that will notice, you know. So if you were going into work and you were struggling, the likelihood is that somebody in your kind of workspace will notice that things have changed for you, that maybe you're not coping as well as you were. When you're working from home and you only have maybe once a week a Zoom call or something like that to check in, it's harder for those people to recognise that you're not actually doing okay. So we all sometimes talk about stress and feeling stressed, usually when we feel we have too much to do and too much on our minds, or other people are making unreasonable demands on us, or we're dealing with situations that we don't have any control over. And control's a really important thing, isn't it? So
absolutely. So we want you to look at this graph and we want you to think about the last 2 weeks. Where would you put yourself over the last 2 weeks? So you don't have to share with us. You can share with us in the chat box if you'd like to. We just want you to think about where you might put yourself over the last 2 weeks. Same as you, right? You have a think about where you might be.
Yeah. I can tell you where I were just before this started this morning.
Yeah. Okay, so some people are in strain, some people are in stretch, some people are in comfort. Absolutely, I can imagine there has been a lot more pressure with working with members of the public. Absolutely. Okay, so now go on.
I was going to say we're aware that obviously it's the first time we've delivered this training, but we're aware that we're kind of running a bit short on time. So if we whiz through this next few bits, we may be able to keep on target for everybody here. So
absolutely. So we want you to think about where you'd like to be, just quickly while that's up there, where you would like to be ideally. And then we want you to think about what stopped you from getting from that place of perhaps strain or stretch to that place of perhaps comfort. Or maybe you'd like to feel a little bit stretched, but not so much as it goes into strain.
I was going to say the stretch can sometimes be quite motivating, can't it? It can sometimes kind of get you to achieve a little bit more, but it can be dangerous at the same time if you go too far the other way.
Absolutely. So on that note then, we're going to think about self-care, and I'm thinking probably most people here can relate to, I can be there for others, but I struggle to look after me.
Yeah, so looking after your family, looking after your children, your partner, other people that are important in your life, even looking after work and making sure that's okay, you know, but is that sometimes done at your own expense?
So we're going to just quickly look at, because like Rai says, we're aware we're kind of overrunning with our time, and we know we'll put the rest of the timings out. We're going to look at ways that you can self-care. If we've got more time, or if we were doing this face-to-face, we'd either put you in a breakout room or we might work with you in a group. But the 5 ways to well-being are there as 5 different ways that you can improve your emotional well-being and your mental health. The first one is connect, and here are some ideas of how you can stay connected. So take time each day to be with your partner or family. Sometimes it can be easy to let that slip.
Arrange to spend time with friends. That's really important.
Have lunch with a colleague to maybe actually make sure you take half an hour away from your desk if you're working in the office to go and have a coffee perhaps with a friend, or go and have a walk at lunchtime.
Voluntary work. So again, it's not just about connecting with those people, but you feel good about yourself for kind of giving back.
And keep in touch online with friends who live far away, so keep connected to those other people. The important thing with Connect is don't just rely on it being all online. It's been very easy to just be connected with WhatsApp or a phone call or emails or Zoom. Try and actually meet in person where possible. So the next one then is be active. So find free activities to help you get fit. It doesn't always have to cost a lot.
If you have a disability or long-term health condition, find out about how to get active in a safe way.
You might want to try the Couch to 5K. You can download a free app for that.
And you could set a target of reaching just 10,000 steps a day or join a local walking group. I know for me, one of my hobbies is karate. It's something that I do with both my children. And it kind of ticks both those first boxes. Not only am I active, but I'm connecting. I'm part of a karate club, so there's all those people there, but I'm doing things with my kids as well.
Absolutely. Give. Oh, 1 second. Absolutely. So volunteering can help an awful lot. Thank you for sharing that. It kind of gives you that connection. It gets you out of the house. Absolutely. You perhaps learn new skills. So give is one. So say thank you to someone who has done something for you. So make a point of acknowledging what they've done. I think thank you definitely for me goes such a long way.
It does, yeah. Ask friends, family and colleagues how they are. Really listen to their answers. Like I said to you before, just saying like, how are you doing can mean something significant to somebody. It feels like they've been noticed and someone cares.
Support friends and family by offering your time. I think time is the most precious thing that you can offer. It's something that you can't ever get back, but giving someone your time can be so important.
And again, we're back to volunteering here. Volunteer at a local school or hospital. And again, you're then broadening the people that you're connecting with once again.
Keep learning is one of them. So try and learn to cook or bake something new. You love your cooking, don't you, Ryan?
Yeah, I do. I cooked a nice lamb curry for tea tonight. I did that yesterday. It's in the fridge. Work on a DIY project. There's lots of online videos to help. Yeah, YouTube will answer any question if you're trying to do something new for the first time.
Sign up for a course at your local college or an online course to learn something new, perhaps something you've always been interested in but never had time for.
Try a new hobby or a sport, absolutely.
And then the last one is take notice. So try and stay in the present moment. It's really easy to sit here and think, oh, I've got to do that, and I've got to do that, and I've got to do this. And then you miss the moment that you're actually in.
Notice how other people are feeling. So that could be someone at home. It could be somebody at work. It could even be somebody, if you've gone out for, to have a coffee or something, you might notice someone just doesn't seem quite okay.
Notice nature on your walk into work or school. So rather than just, the school run, you've got to make sure your kids have got the bags, the lunch and all of that. Take that time to notice, particularly at the moment, it's just changing to autumn. Notice perhaps the colours, the temperature. Just take that time to be present in that moment in whatever you're doing.
I always do this. Take time to appreciate the food that you're eating. Yeah, it's like, and again, that's another connection time for me. It's like I always eat with the family. So we all sit down together, no technology, and just, we appreciate that time we have together and enjoy the food we're having.
And practice mindfulness. Again, there's lots of things out there that's mindfulness breathing videos, mindfulness, kind of just staying in the moment, being aware of what's going on. Even if it's just having a cup of tea, actually appreciating that nice cup of tea that you've made, taking those few minutes out to appreciate it. So it's really important to look after yourself, and here are some of the things to do. We're aware we're kind of whizzing through it because we know we're
also aware, like for this slide in particular, if you pop those up, so is obviously it's been recorded, so it can be shared. You know what I mean? You've got those resources. So talk about how you feel, ask for the help if you need it, try and be realistic about kind of things that are happening and how you're coping. Stay organized, take a break and make time for yourself. Get enough sleep. That's something I'm really bad at. Learn relaxation techniques. Look after your physical health, and don't feel guilty if you have to say no to something. Okay, so finally then, where else can you get information and support? And it's a really good point that you made, Ryan, about it being recorded. So signposting, you might have an employee assistance program that you've got access to. If you've got HR or your line manager, ask them about it, they'll know. Occupational health, again, it can be work related, it can be something you seek outside of work. Information is available from your unions and other membership bodies. There are lots and lots of different support groups, so disability support groups, but there's lots of kind of support groups out there as well.
There's details of external organisations that offer mental health support, such as Your Local Mind.
And how to access counselling or therapy in your local area. Again, if anyone's kind of interested in those things, I'm sure we don't mind sharing his email addresses, you know,
Absolutely.
with the organisers, and you can just kind of pop us an email for that.
There's lots of local and national helplines.
Online peer support resources, including apps such as Headspace. There's also groups that meet up quite a lot as well.
We've got the Samaritans and their free phone number, 116 123. You can talk to them about anything, and it's confidential. And
then on Every Mind website, we've got this I Need Urgent Help button there. If you click that, this is if you're really, really struggling, then it'll get you through to that kind of crisis services, I suppose. Yeah.
Absolutely. Lastly, thank you very much for having us. We apologise that we overrun with our time. Lottie has got my email address if you want to pass that on to anybody, if anybody's got any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
That was really great, and I can't believe that's the first time you've done that presentation. Absolute pros, so well done. I think for me, taking away from that presentation is just how important it is to be proactive about our mental health. So definitely for me, I'm going to certainly take more notice, because I know that's something I'm pretty terrible at. So thank you guys. I should have said at the start of the day, we have built-in breaks throughout the morning, so we've just got 2 more presentations coming up, and then we'll take a break. So the next speaker, Chris Stanley, I'd like to welcome. Chris works for Public Health at Staffordshire County Council, and I'm really delighted that he's going to give more information about the mental health landscape here in Staffordshire.
Jude, would you mind just making me host?
Yes. She says.
Yes, because I can't control my slides from where I am, so Charlotte's doing it for me.
1 second before I go, I shall just make you, if I make, just trying to figure out, if I make you host,
make Charlotte host.
You can make whoever else needs to be made host.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is huge amounts of pressure. How to do this?
I'm so sorry. If you
no,
click on whoever picture it is, there's 3 dots that appear in the corner of their picture, and it'll say in that list, make host.
Okay, make host. There we go. Right. Hazel, hopefully take over from here.
Fab. Thank you. Right. Well, I'll canter through this quite quickly. It's not as interactive or as exciting, I'm afraid, as Zoe and Rye's brilliant presentation just now. Thank you so much for that. So I'm just going to very quickly describe to you, well, partly on behalf of a colleague, Ben Hollands from the from Midlands Partnership Mental Health Trust, about the in fact, if you go to the next slide, sorry, about the Community Mental Health Transformation Programme, but very quickly. I'm just going to quickly touch on then something about the actual current situation in terms of suicide rates, in particular in Staffordshire, and then I'm going to pass on to a colleague, Louise, who's going to talk a little bit about young people and mental health. But I'll crack on. So next slide, please. So very quickly, the Community Mental Health Transformation Programme. This is really just to make it so that you're aware of it if it's something of interest to you. It's a 3-year transformation. It's taking place from this year for the next 3 years inclusive, and it sets out the priorities within the NHS long-term plan, and it's bolstered with the help of millions of pounds of national funding. And the idea is to create a proactive model. I'm going to read some of this so I get this right. Proactive model of community-based mental health, based within the primary care networks, but basically working in partnership with GPs, commissioners, local authorities, and voluntary and community organisations, alongside people with lived experience. And the idea is that it's to develop integrated approaches to work in new ways with the support of people with lived experience to deliver services that effectively meet the needs of communities. And the voluntary and community sector are a critical link in this. And I'll perhaps just explain the connection with this mental health and physical activity. Can I have the next slide, please? Sorry. So this is really just, I won't dwell on this. This is people can look at later on. This is just the sort of the rules of engagement that the trustees the trusts are doing in trying to actually move this program forward. And speaking as somebody who's not part of the people driving it forward, I would say there really is something going on here about trying to work more inclusively and more, working with partners. So it's quite an exciting project that they're doing. Next slide, please. And very quickly on this, I'm not going to try and dwell on this too much. Basically, this is we know the benefits of physical activity to provide resilience to good mental health, but part of the mental health transformation work is particularly interested in how we might better use it to support people who have existing mental health problems. And I won't bother particularly with that going on there, but basically the lifespan of people with severe mental disorders is shorter than that of the general population. In fact, Ryan, Zoe already sort of touched on that. Next slide, please. This just shows, this graph here just sort of shows the life expectancy gap. The light green bar, the second bar, is the prevalence of having a physical health condition for all people, for the wider population, and the dark green bar is the prevalence for people who have severe mental illnesses. And you can what this shows is whether it's regardless of gender, age, or socioeconomic situation, if you have a severe mental illness, you are also more likely to have a physical health condition, and this is one of the things that they're particularly worried about. Next slide, please. This really just, I haven't got time, I think, to go through this whole program. This really just, this explains how their program is working. I think the important thing for you to let you know about is that people, what they're doing as part of this program is they are going to be commissioning a number of different services and other opportunities, including those around lifestyle to support people with mental health conditions and improve their physical health through sport, through physical activity as part of that. If you want to know more about that, and they've set up a new dynamic procurement system particularly for the voluntary and community sector, which is a light touch procurement process so that all community organisations can tender for opportunities relating to it. There is an opportunity to do that. So what I haven't got on this is actually the link, but Jude, if we can send out, I've got a contact from the programme for anybody who's interested in getting on the mailing list and knowing more about this, and if we can send that out with the with the stuff later on to everybody who's on here, that would be great. Yeah, thanks, Lottie. So next slide, please. Oh, actually, I said that. So that's the key messages. Yeah, let's move on to the next slide. I just wanted to quickly just give you an update on the actual latest suicide rates in Stoke and Staffordshire. You've had a little bit of information on that, but there's literally new data come out over the last week, which shows the data up to it's the last registration. So it's suicide deaths registered up to 2020. And I just think it's worth people being aware of the issue in Stoke and in Staffordshire. Next slide. This is the suicide rate for all people in Stoke-on-Trent, and you can see. So the black line is the national average, which is fairly stable with a bit of a slight increase recently. The Stoke number is going up at a frighteningly rapid rate. And the red dot means that it's now is significantly worse than the national average. So we definitely have an issue in Stoke. If we look at the next slide, please, which breaks it down into males and females, that doesn't look that different. That's men only, and you can see there that it's clearly an issue with men in Stoke-on-Trent. Next slide, please. Not so much with women. That in Stoke-on-Trent, that is staying much closer to the national average. But then if we look at Staffordshire, next slide, please. I'll just go through these quick. Again, we're seeing a real increase, and we're significantly higher than the national average. What I probably should do actually is just clarify one thing. These are 3-year rolling averages. So in both in case of in the case of Staffordshire, the 2020 data is actually slightly lower than the 2019 data. In Stoke, it's about the same. In fact, it's one higher. But because it's a rolling average, because the 20 2020 data is much higher than the 2017 data, if that makes sense. The rolling average is continuing to go up, but we still clearly got an issue. Next slide, please. In Staffordshire, what is particularly interesting, there's a difference between Staffordshire and Stoke. In Staffordshire, still got an issue here. The men's, the rate for male is higher than the national average, but it's not significantly so. But if we have the next slide again, please. Quite a worrying thing going on in Staffordshire, totally different to Stoke, and I don't have an explanation for it at the moment. Suicide rate in females in Staffordshire is climbing. And has been climbing for some time. That's certainly something I think we need to have some concern about. Numbers of females are still much lower than men, but the rate there is obviously something to be aware of. Next slide, please. I just thought I'd very quickly touch. So that data is registrations up to 2020. The way that the determination of the suicides can be a complex process, and it takes quite a while. This graph shows you the calls relating to suicide concerns to the Staffordshire Mental Health Helpline. Sorry, those bottom figures are very hard to tell, but those are the quarters. So that peak towards the right hand side is basically last winter. So you can see there was a massive increase in number of calls, number of people actually concerned about suicide, or making comments where suicide was mentioned to the helpline. It's now coming down, thankfully. But I did want to just say, so clearly we've seen, and as Ryan, Zoe have sort of mentioned, there's been a big increase in awareness in the reported anxieties around mental health. Over the pandemic period. What I would want to say, however, is just a little bit of clarity around suicide rates over the period. We haven't got the data yet, which is quite an important thing to say, but what data there is, where there have been real-time surveillance studies done nationally and even internationally, it would suggest that there has not been an increase in suicides actually over the last 18 months, over the last pandemic, during the pandemic itself. That may, and we don't know for sure, but the evidence suggests not, and that might be a lot to do with the fact that the situation is so different. There's a lot of protective factors, people living at home, things like that. So although people have been concerned about it and talking about it, the actual rate does not look like it's increased. That I'm not saying it definitely hasn't, and I'm not saying that it won't increase as things change and things and as other problems occur. But I do think it's important just to be clear that when I've heard people talking about suicide rates rocketing during the pandemic, that is not based on evidence. That's based on anxiety. It's based on speculation. It might be based on anecdote. It might be based on people who are aware of somebody who's taken their lives, sadly. It's not based on evidence, and I just think it's really important to be aware of that, because it doesn't help to claim a normality of a situation when it doesn't exist. So I think we just need to be aware. Okay, I'm going to next slide, please. I'll probably put this in the wrong place. This is just that's just to be aware that there's the county council itself is currently running it's an email-based campaign, just using those 5 ways of well-being, particularly that was mentioned earlier on, just try and encourage people to find ways to do it. So people, please do sign up to that if you fancy it. And next slide, please. I'm going to pass on now. So I'm just going to very briefly talk about very briefly talk about the Suicide Prevention Partnership. There is a Stoke and Staffordshire wide Suicide Prevention Partnership. It's a sort of a multi-agency partnership. We're putting together a new action plan, which is all about working better together, making better use of our data, understanding it and working on it better, targeting those most at risk of suicide, raising awareness and tackling stigma. And in particular, we have been doing some really well-received community training, which I'm not going to talk about because Lorna's going to talk about that shortly. But I am now going to hand over to Louise, who's going to talk a little bit more about emotional health and well-being in children and younger people.
Brilliant, thank you. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So I'm just going to provide a sort of quick overview really of some of the activities that Staffordshire County Council's Children's Public Health team are involved in around children and young people's emotional health and wellbeing. So you'll see some key facts. You will receive the slide deck after today, so don't think you've got to scribble these down or memorise them by any means. But it's interesting to note that half of all adults with mental health issues develop symptoms before the age of 14, which I think is pretty significant. According to our latest data, we've got 37.3% of care experienced children and young people in Staffordshire have their emotional well-being is a cause for concern. So that is over a third of care experienced children. There's also a significant number, and it's significantly higher than the national average, of children and young people aged 10 to 24 admitted to hospital as a result of self-harm in Staffordshire. And as using the data, we can see between 1 and 2 in 10 children in the early years, that's up to age 5, have poor emotional well-being. And almost 1 in 10 children of school age have a mental health disorder in Staffordshire. We can see that the number of referrals to child and adolescent mental health services, or CAMS, increased by 11% between 2017 and 18 and 19, and that doesn't include referrals to third sector organisations, and our early indications are that those referrals have increased again over the last year due to the pandemic. And research from NHS Digital has found that 54% of children and young people with a mental disorder have said that lockdown has made their life worse. So it's a significant issue that we're looking at across Staffordshire. Next slide, please. So one of the ways we're trying to support children and young people's mental health across Staffordshire is by commissioning the county-wide emotional health and wellbeing service, which is delivered by Action for Children. This service is commissioned by Staffordshire County Council in partnership with the 5 CCGs across Staffordshire. It commenced in April last year, right at the beginning of the first lockdown, which was a significant challenge to get the service up and running during that time. It's aimed at children and young people experiencing low to moderate mental health needs, such as low mood, anxiety, etc. It's available for children and young people aged 5 to 18 living in Staffordshire. And the offer is split into sort of 3 distinct parts: a preventative offer, some digital work and a digital offer, and direct work. I suppose the key challenges over the last year, having started the service during the pandemic, has been staff recruitment, increased demand, both of which are not unique to Action for Children by any means. This is a whole system concern at the moment, as well as incomplete referrals being received by Action for Children, which causes some delays while Action for Children figure out whether referrals are suitable for the service or suitable for another sort of service that could be self-help, that could be up to CAMS. Next slide, please. I'd just like to let you know about the mental health support teams in schools. The 2017 Green Paper, Transforming Children and Young People's Mental Health Provision, set out the ambition to pilot mental health support teams in schools across the country. The ambition is to have between 1/5 and 1/4 of the country have mental health teams in place by the end of 2023. And Staffordshire currently has 5 mental health support teams. They're in Newcastle under Lyme, Moorlands and East Staffordshire. Cannock started last January, and there's some areas of South Staffordshire also covered. And another team is going to be covering Stafford and surrounds from 2022. The ambition is that we'll have teams across every district in Staffordshire, but I must point out they're not in every school. So there's only around 8,000 pupils per mental health support team, and there are many, many more pupils than there are capable of being fitted within that 8,000. It is also, I must also point out that what the mental health support teams do provides a very similar offer for low to moderate needs as the Action for Children service. So if a mental health support team isn't in a particular school, there is also the Action for Children service, which does very similar work. Next slide, please. We have recently piloted some network meetings for senior mental health leads in schools. I had one this morning and another one earlier this week. They're initially taking place in the autumn term, and it's a multi-agency sort of approach to bring together these senior mental health leads in schools with the CAMS representatives from the north and the south, CCGs, Action for Children, and any other interested parties that can sort of support and share information and ideas amongst a school and for schools to gain peer support. Next slide, please. I should also raise that the DfE are providing funding for training for senior mental health leads in schools, and this training is for any sort of the mental health lead in the school. It could be the head teacher, a deputy head teacher, or somebody else. It's a grant of around, I think, £1,200, and it's to pay for the training and the backfill of staff in the school for the time that they're out undertaking the training. The grants are going to be offered to around a third of all state schools. The application form is now open for schools to access that training. And there are further details that are going to be available on the website. I have put the link here from tomorrow. There are more information coming out from tomorrow. So we don't seem to find out about it until quite last minute, but I found out this morning more information is available tomorrow. Next slide, please. So last year in August, the DfE let us know about this Wellbeing for Education Return and Recovery project. So phase 1 that took place from September last year till March this year involved training up some local experts to roll out some webinars to school and college staff with the aim of supporting the wellbeing of pupils and students as they return to education. It was well attended. 88% of survey respondents said they felt more confident to identify emotional well-being needs and more confident in supporting those needs. And phase 2 is coming on board now, and it's focusing on the well-being of education and childcare staff and the under 5s, as this was seen as a sort of gap across Staffordshire. And next slide, please. As part of the DfE Wellbeing for Education Return project, we developed a mental health support pathway. So this is this pretty sort of map that you can see. There are 2 pathways, one for the north of Staffordshire, which has North Staffs Combined as the CAMS provider in the area, and one for the south of Staffordshire, which our partners MPFT are the CAMS provider. And that's why there's sort of 2 sort of slightly different pathways, even though the support available, such as Action for Children across Staffordshire, that pathway to CAMS is slightly different. So there are 2 different maps. We've had really positive feedback from GPs and schools, the DfE themselves, regarding the pathways document, and you can find it on Staffordshire Connect, and I put the link here. It's on Staffordshire Connect, so the information available is always the most up-to-date that we can provide you. But by all means, go and have a look at that. You'll find it quite useful, and you can share it with professionals as well as children and families, so that they're able to access the sort of support they need in the most timely way that they can. This is my last slide now, so it's a plug as well. This is the Kind Minds e-newsletter. This is a half-termly e-newsletter, originally designed for education settings across Staffordshire. It's produced by partners, and it pulls together all sorts of useful information about children and young people's mental health and emotional well-being. It's been going since September 2020. We send it out via the school's e-bag to over 400 schools across Staffordshire and colleges, and a further 200 individuals and organisations. And it's also shared by our partners through their own newsletters and websites. So schools will stick it on the website. Staffordshire Safeguarding Board have all back issues on their website. It is developed in partnership with Action for Children, our CAMS providers MPFT and North Staffs Combined, Staffordshire Police, and every issue we have guest contributors, including local schools, so they're sharing good practice, educational psychologists, again sharing good practice or tools. Staffordshire Council of Voluntary Youth Services have provided information, and it gives service updates, local and national campaigns, information, a host of resources and training opportunities, and sort of tries to alert you to any information that could support you and support children and families. I've put the link to the latest issue, which is issue 7, but just as a little plug, if you want to receive the Kind Minds e-newsletter on a half-termly basis, please stick your email address in the chat and I'll make sure you're on the distribution list. And that's my final slide, I think. So if you've got any questions, do you want to raise your hand or put them in the chat? I'll be happy to help.
Thanks, Lou, that was great. And yeah, thanks, Chris, also. I think, Lou, to your point about the map that's been produced, we have certainly found that such a useful document, because the provision of mental health care and support is just an absolute minefield. So I'd encourage everyone on the call to look at that. And I think in terms of registering to the newsletter, if you could just drop Hazel a note after this, and we can coordinate that in conjunction with Lou. So thank you. So on to our next presentation, Lorna Scott. I'm really delighted to welcome Lorna to talk about training and opportunities nationally and locally. Hi, Lorna.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. I'm going to have to do another witty, I'm afraid, Jude, because I haven't got access to my slides through Zoom. So is there someone able to move the slides on for me when I ask?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll do that.
Yeah, okay. Just here today to talk about the suicide prevention programme for Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, which is funded by NHS England and also linked to the Suicide Prevention Partnership for the area and its wider action plan that Chris mentioned previously. Next slide, please. Yeah, we like to think about suicide as being other. It's not something, it's something that happens to other people. Not me, not my family, not my friends, and not my sports club. So it's not my business. But suicide does touch people's lives and frequently including my own. Just to give you a little bit of stats here. So 1 in 5 people will think about suicide at some point in their lives. So I know statistically in this virtual room at the moment, people have or do currently have suicidal thoughts. 2/3 of people taking their own lives are not known to mental health services. Now, this could be reticence with help seeking. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the 2/3 of people don't have a mental health problem. There could be some of that, as we saw with the poll that we had with Ryan and Zoe earlier. It also could be, there's complex reasons sometimes behind people taking their own lives. Loneliness, relationship breakdown, financial concerns, losing a job. So it may not always be that they identify themselves as having a mental health problem. So therefore, why would they seek help from mental health services? I was speaking at a community event a few nights ago, and a gentleman had just come out of a relationship and was having suicidal thoughts. I obviously started with giving him the information on services, but he didn't want to contact services. And I think that's really where community comes in. So the community groups we've got, like Men Unite or Andy's Man Club, but also community as a whole. The groups that we have, including sports clubs, can really help people when they're in this suicidal state of mind, and give them immediate support, but also help them, handhold them to accessing other services as well. So the community is a really big part in suicide prevention. And the last point, 6,000 people a year take their own life. I'll bow down to mine statistics on this. I think you had 5,465. So next slide, please. So if suicide is everyone's business, why don't we talk about it more? And in the slide from mine, we spoke about the myths surrounding mental health. There are myths surrounding suicide as well. And these are things that I used to think before suicide touched my life about 12 years ago. I felt that talking about suicide was a bad idea, as it could give somebody the idea to try it, when really it's a stigma that surrounds suicide that stops people from talking and seeking help. The idea that suicide is a dirty word. And I find it again in my work, I find that people are more open to talking about mental health these days. But I do find when I talk about suicide, there is still that kind of looking down at the floor syndrome, not really knowing what to say. And also, if a person is serious about killing themselves, then there's nothing that we can do, because they want to die. Sooner or later, they'll take their own life if I stop them today. When I speak to survivors and research has been done, it's actually a more ambiguous state of mind. The people trying to take their own life don't want to die. They just can't stand the pain of living how they do currently. And it's the end to that emotional pain, that mental pain that they're looking for, that release, rather than wanting to die per se. But that gives us some real opportunities there, because we can deal with those issues that are behind suicide. Yeah, next slide, please. So to get Staffordshire and Stoke talking about suicide prevention, Chris has also mentioned the Talk Suicide campaign that we're running, which is all about getting everybody involved in suicide prevention. So bringing in local individuals, organisations, business, everybody really together to help prevent suicide, on the understanding that we can all do something, and bringing people together. The small things we all do can make a difference. And we've been working with other people as part of this Talk Suicide campaign. We've been doing some work with Stoke Football Club, Stoke City Football Club, and also going out to the universities as well. We've also been affiliated with some smaller campaigns, which we'll come to later on. We've done recently a Just Say Something campaign with two PCSOs, Andy Bagnall and Keith Meller, who involved in talking people down from bridges and supporting suicidal people in their daily life, and really wanted to act. And the Just Say Something campaign is about breaking that chain of thought. And I think there's a similar campaign as well that British Transport Police did on the railways, which is all about small talk saving lives. Next slide, please. So why do we need sports clubs involved? Sports can be male dominated. Sorry, we'll go to, can we just move on a slide, please? We'll go back to that afterwards at the end of the presentation. So why do we need sports clubs involved? Well, without peddling too many stereotypes here, sports can be male dominated. As mine said, 3/4 of people that take their own life are men. When we look at suicide, we focus very much on the middle-aged men, because that's the most dominant group in the statistics when it comes to people taking their own lives. But also, I think as well, we need to look at the younger males. Suicide is the biggest single killer of young men under 45 years. So if you're male and under 45, the most likely thing to take your life is you, which is quite a sobering thought. And we also need to think about how many young men are involved in sports and what opportunity that gives us in terms of reaching out to them. Also, we talked about that community response to suicide prevention. Sports clubs are really influential and often part of what I think is like the beating heart of the community. We've been doing some other work as part of the programme as well, with these other kind of beating hearts of the community, like pubs. We've been doing a lot of work on getting information out on beer mats, as part of our You're Not Yourself Mate campaign. We're also working with tattooists, barbers and shops, all these parts of our community which we really need to reach with this work. Sports clubs as well can potentially be a safe place to talk about your issues, fears, and get support. Could I just have the next slide, please? It was quite interesting recently. I saw an article in The Guardian which talks about a short film called Sunday, which goes into the pandemic and talks about the loss of sport. But what it also talks about losing is that camaraderie and support that often comes with sports and playing and being involved in these games. And just a quote here, which the dressing room is a very safe place. You feel comfortable. Quite often as blokes, that's when we're most likely to divulge how we're feeling or what our work's been like or what we're not looking forward to. So, and I put a few pictures there of male bonding. Next page, please. So what can the programme offer sports clubs? We've got our fully funded suicide awareness and prevention training with Mind. Has anybody been on the training? Could you just put it in comments if you have and what you thought about it, please? If you have. So it's a half-day course on Zoom and it's led by Mind trainers who are also counsellors. We've been getting some great feedback on it. It covers not just awareness and the myth busting, but also how to provide pragmatic support on the ground to someone who's suicidal and help them to seek support. So it's really pragmatic. You don't need any mental health background to go on it, and it's open to everybody. It's not something, looking at who we've had on the course so far, we haven't had a lot of people from sports clubs and the sporting community, which is disappointing. I'd really like to encourage more involvement from the sporting community on this course, please. We've also got some fully funded mental health first aid training, which is a 2-day course, and that helps understand mental health conditions and how to respond at a layperson level. Now, we do know that training is not always going to be the answer and perhaps not the best ways to reach the sporting community. And that's where our community champion or champion communities groups come in to really start looking at suicide prevention at a very grassroots level and involving the sports clubs in that. We're coming up with a lot of ideas about how we can reach the sporting community and sports clubs, but it's very much kind of ideas that we've come up with ourselves. And what I'd like to do in the workshop session is have more input about what is really needed on the ground. How can we support you better? We've got ideas like having speakers for adult members of the sports clubs, mental health awareness with the junior teams and coaches, and pulling support as well from some of the sporting bodies that I know is out there. I mean, my son, he's at a junior team at rugby. Rugby is his sport, and he thinks that his coach can walk on water. So he listens far more to his coach than he ever does to me, unfortunately. So I think as much as we can get the coaches involved in this, that would be absolutely brilliant too. So that's me. That's my presentation for today, and I look forward to talking to you in the workshop session. Could we run that video now from our Just Say Something campaign, please?
Please say something.
Just over 2 years ago, I lost my grandson when he took his own life. He was only 21. It affects so many people, one person. And that's why it is important that you ask the question, you know, that you do. Just say something. Because you don't want to be left asking questions afterwards.
Conversations really can and do save lives.
Just say something.
Just say something.
As a community, we need to talk about suicide more than we do.
Show that you care and that they are not alone. You could just help save a life.
Just say something.
Just say something.
If this can help one person out there that's thinking of doing this, to speak to someone, talk to someone, get that support, get that help, because it's out there.
Please say something. maybe you'll save a life.
It's hard to talk, but knowing the differences and benefits that it can make helps.
Just say something.
Talking about our mental health is more important now than it's ever been before.
Just say something.
Please, 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 whether it's for your kids, whether it's for your family, whether it's for your friends, whether it's for a stranger's children or family as friends, please, 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 please just say something.
Just say something.
Just say something.
Please reach out. Please just say something.
Just say something.
If we can help prevent one person from going through suicide, then it will all be worthwhile.
Just say something. Just say something.
Everyone is going through something in life. Check in on your friends and family, ask them if they really are okay, and let's start talking about mental health more.
We're not asking you to be okay, we're not asking you to save yourself, we're just asking you to say something.
There's always someone to talk to, they'll pick up the phone, just shout out loud. Someone will want to help. You should never do this alone.
Great. Fabulous. Hi, Kathy. Good to see some faces. It's a strange experience talking to a screen full of black squares. So nice to know I'm not here talking to myself, which isn't unusual on a Wednesday morning, I have to say. Right. So again, thanks so much to from this morning. I know we've had some requests to share the Say Something video, and we'll make sure that that's available off the back of today's presentation, along with the slide deck and the other resources that have been requested. So thank you. So I'm really, really excited for this next session and to welcome Chris Humphreys. Chris is the man that's put all of this kind of theory into action and making stuff happen on the ground. And I'm really interested to hear what he's got to say today. So Chris, hopefully you're there. Lovely to see you. And I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. You've got my slides up. That's fantastic. So when I say press go and or play the video, you'll be able to do it for me, or somebody will. That'd be good. Thank you very much. Hi, it's great to see actually so many names that I recognise on here. So some of you will already be familiar with the activities that I'm on. But so good morning, just about, and thank you for allowing me to attend this online conference today, where I'll be talking about the learned experiences of helping to support people in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent to be more open about their mental health challenges. So my name is Chris Humphreys, and I coordinate the sporting activities of a community interest company called WASSPS, who provide walking activities, sports and social programmes across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent in one form or another. Background, we formed in 2013 and christened ourselves the Chesterton Crusaders, denoting the place where we were based and the fact that we were pioneers in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent for this adventure and journey, as we often call it. Our activities principally focus on walking football, walking netball and walking cricket, as well as providing social activities such as theatre visits, nights out in restaurants, pubs, and even in each other's house parties, which is getting quite familiar now. Our membership is aimed at those who are aged 50 or over, who may have mobility challenges which prevent them from playing faster paced games. That was certainly the intention as we set out. However, we do have members in their 20s, 30s and 40s who do participate for the same reasons as older participants. The great thing about this type of sport is that it's open to all. Men and women can play, less physically abled individuals can also join in, and everyone will benefit from getting some moderate exercise in a social setting. Today, for the purposes of this session, I'm going to focus on the male aspect of mental health as experienced through the walking football activity. Just as we've said earlier on, males, as we know, do find it hard to be open about their challenges and problems. And in the early days of our venture, I would say that that was the case. Cards close to the chest. Hello, good morning. Looking forward to playing today. That was great. See you next week. And I would have to say that was the norm for quite a while, but it was all enjoyable. As the years have rolled on, that has most definitely changed. So let me share with you that journey to today, where the Crusaders family, as we now formally sort of call ourselves, is now a support organisation for all who participate, helping members to overcome barriers associated with mental health challenges of many kinds. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, here we show a few of the very many photos we've accumulated over the years from our activities. Starting top left, when my son, my wife and I kicked off the footballing activities in January 2013, supported then by Age UK North Staffordshire, who did support us for over 3 years before their demise in the local area. We remember that first day with fondness when Paul, the gent with the white towel around his neck, walked through the door and then spent a grueling hour kicking a ball around with me and my son until we were exhausted. Paul has been an ever-present, and you will hear more about him shortly, as he's become an inspiration to others in recent times, and not until recent times. Over the preceding months, more and more turned up, and the netball was then started. The rest is history, as they say, but before we leave this slide, I want to tell you the story of retired BT electrician and hospital DJ Keith Salmon. Some may recognise or know him. He joined us in 2014 at the tender age of 72. Now, Keith had not participated in any physical activity for over 20 years. And in 2015, we were featured in the Guardian newspaper, who were focusing on the physical benefits of participation in sports like this. Put on the spot by the reporter, Keith opened up about his own challenges. We didn't know anything about this. And he became the catalyst for the future, where members began to open up about their own problems. Hopefully this will work, but let's listen to Keith talk openly about something that we never knew at that time. And at the start of this short video, there is some wind noise, but it soon becomes clear when Keith explains why he believes that life is a fragile bargain.
You done? Well done, fellas. I just love football. It's in my heart. Grandkids play. I watch them every week. Just love the game. Love the competition. Good friends. It's brilliant, mate. What would you be doing if you weren't playing? Sitting at home, reading the paper or watching the television. Bone idle. And when did you last play? Played for 20 years till I started here. Yeah, it's just tough, yeah. I've had open heart surgery. I've got atrial fibrillation. I've seen my doctor and my cardiologist, and he said go for it. So here I am every Saturday, like a fool.
You don't take it easy?
No way. No point, is there? Life's a fragile bargain, rescindable at any time by the other party. So if you have that view, go out and enjoy yourself. You've got all these guys, and if I can beat one of the younger guys, I can live on that for a week.
And wow, that was the moment when our activities took a new turn in 2015, and members started to come forward and share their problems. Can we just go back to the slides? And instead of having a warm up and kickabout, then go home, we start with the handshake and the chats, where most members openly discuss matters at their leisure, under no pressure. And then again at the end, they hang around to continue chatting. Now, Keith sadly passed away this year, but his family reckon that participation in our activities slowed the decline of his health, prolonged his life, and ensured he left this life with a big smile. And it was around this time, that John Hilditch, an ex-pro referee, that came forward to explain that he had been a couch potato for many years as a consequence of Parkinson's. He knew Keith and asked if he could join our group to help improve his mobility. And today, John, the creator of so-called Fergie Time, for all those who know what that's about, is a very active member, turning up every Saturday and taking his role seriously. And despite Parkinson's, he has rebuilt his physical and mental health and has been instrumental in the growth of walking football across the county, bringing new, older referees to take part. He regularly rings me to say, thanks for Saturday. How many will we have for next Saturday? Are there any tournaments coming up? Thanks for today. It makes a difference. And the wife is really glad to be rid of me again on Saturdays. So I could go on for a long time recounting other stories along the journey today, but I want to fast forward to 2020 and the impact of COVID. Who would have known? At first, everyone reeled back at the fact that we were entering an unprecedented time of lockdown without really understanding the many consequences of this action. At first, our members understood the decision made by the government and abided by the rules. But after a while, it became really clearly abundant that this was not a quick fix or a short period of inactivity. We saw that many members were beginning to suffer from isolation, and instead of doing and saying nothing, they did start out to talk and share their challenges. And our members come from all walks of life with many differing experiences: unemployed, company directors, tradesmen, widowers, all with different physical and mental challenges. But when they step out on a Saturday morning, they're all equal. Our WhatsApp group during this time became a great medium for chat, and this led to individual group and group phone calls, and when allowed, meetings of small groups for a coffee or a Sunday walk in the park. And we noticed a complete difference in the way in which people were starting to engage with each other. And through all of 2020, the sentiments and words you see on this slide were mentioned by many of our members who were eager to rejoin the group activities. These are real statements and words, definitely not made up. I've taken these from the notes that we've gathered over the time, and you'll see some very common words that some of us have talked about today being real. And so after a period of having been in football regularly for 3, 4, 5 years for some people, lockdown became a real big challenge. And at each point when we resumed in 2020 for the short periods between each lockdown, it became less about the fact that football was the occasion and more about the strength of unity, the camaraderie, the banter, and the opening up and sharing of the barriers in their life. A company director relived his torture at the work-life shift and the challenges of working at home, to the point where he sought support for mental health. I would start to meet him for coffee and would share his anguish, but together we worked through it. And today, he's now retired and really enjoying life again, partaking in counselling for himself, Pilates, and actually supporting other members in our group in similar predicaments. A mother of a member recently came forward and said, "Do you realise what you've done for my son? He used to fear life and was in sheltered accommodation. His disabilities and mental health prevented him from leading an ordinary life. But now he is living in his own accommodation and socialising, and looks forward to meeting his Crusaders family who have turned his life around." And that's quite momentous in some of the other stories I could tell you. So this gentleman, from saying nothing for many months, is now a popular centre of attention in several banter sessions, and he's leading a very active life, still supported, but in his own accommodation. And then there's Geordie, who is 82. Some people might know him. Never kicked a ball in his life until he joined us about 5 years ago. An ex-army veteran who would tell so many stories, but in 2020, he developed acute dementia, which has taken its toll. And that's through being locked down and not being able to go out. But again, today, he now turns up every Saturday with his wife, and within minutes, he is awake and full of vigour with a big smile. He starts off slow and he forgets the rules, but at the end of the 2-hour session, he is in full swing with names and banter going on. And at the end, he shakes everybody's hands and says, "Thank you." Now, the wife says, he then lives on that for the weekend and it makes her life better too. "Thank you, see you next Saturday." It's like it's respite for her. And at this point, I would just like to make a special big mention to Claire Greenwood and the team at Together Active, who were instrumental in supporting WASSPS to obtain a lifeline grant from Sport England. Without that funding, we would have found it very difficult to be running our groups today. So thank you. And that really was a lifeline for us as a group. We were very close to having no money as a result of no income and bills that we had to pay during the pandemic. So that revitalised us and helped us, and we've come back stronger. So 2021 has been a revelation in terms of our focus. Whilst the physical activity is great, it's the social interaction that now dominates. And many will finish the game and go for a coffee or tea in the clubhouse. And what used to be 2 hours of togetherness just for football, it's now 3 hours. And then several of the members resume on Sunday morning with a walk around Westport Lake with oatcakes and cheese after. Can I just have the next slide, please? The exciting times are now, as everybody starts to enjoy, share their problems, talk about their problems. We allow it to take place for as long as it needs to take place before we even kick a football on Monday. And it's interesting that very recently, one of our members mentioned that he'd just lost his granddaughter of only 3 months and how difficult that had been. And then a couple of other guys stepped forward and said, I know what it's like to lose somebody. My son actually committed suicide last year, and we didn't know any of that. And all of a sudden, people starting to put their arms around each other and support each other. What has happened is amazing. But a few months ago, we were invited to participate in a media program run by Google called What Do You Want to Do This Summer? And I took a number of our members and our ref John to St George's Park to participate in the filming of the TV adverts you may have seen in the adverts during the Euro 2020 televised games. And Gareth Southgate participated very actively all the way through this with us. And it was an excellent experience. But from that, the media company asked if any of our members would be willing to participate in a studio recording to support some new YouTube publications around the subject of mental health and the benefits that things like walking football can provide. I said, I'll ask, but I can't see anybody coming forward. Bit of a shy lot, this lot. But after a simple WhatsApp message, I get over 10 people saying, count me in. Absolutely amazing. So remember Paul, our founding member. He was the first with his hand up, with fellow member Malcolm, both of whom I would not have expected to do this. What follows is totally unscripted and was filmed in one take. And has become a massive aid to our CIC and others around the country. Please listen to the honesty that comes out, all of which none of us previously knew.
Football in itself is an art form, and therefore it is beautiful in its own right. It is the nation's favourite sport, both in playing and also spectating. Walking football, just a beautiful game at a slower pace, yeah.
My name's Malcolm, I'm 64.
My name's Paul, I'm 66, and I play for Chesterton Walking Football Club, based in Stoke-on-Trent.
Walking football, it's a sedentary side of football, and as the name suggests, it's walking, keeping one foot on the ground. We've even got somebody who's 80 who plays. So we've got all sorts of abilities and mobilities.
There was a period of time, really, where I didn't have a particular focus. Everything just seemed to be relatively kind of grey. You know, no matter where I looked, everything seemed to have a greyness about it. So it was only by chance, complete and utter chance, that I actually saw the flyer one day in the local hairdressers. And I thought, yeah, I can kick a ball, I can run about. It got me out the house, got me talking to people, which may not have happened between Monday to Friday. But it also gave me something that I'd missed, which was that enthusiasm back to do something, and football is my passion. 2 or 3 weeks down the line, when a few more people had come along, and there was maybe 6 or 7 of us, all of a sudden, yes, I was still tired and I was still sweating, but by Christ did I enjoy it. I'm still getting aches and pains now, 8 years later, but they were enjoyable aches and pains because I'd earned them. I'd earned them.
I live alone, so you've got that point where you're your own good friend and your own worst enemy, where you can sit of an evening and do nothing. When walking football comes into your life, you know you're going to go and meet 30 likewise individuals. You're going to have a laugh, some banter, a bit of football, a bit of exercise, and walk away feeling a lot better, really, and you've got sort of camaraderie. We got invited to a tournament in Portugal, and we got to some sort of penalty kick-out, and I hit it as hard as I could. It's in. No, that's it, we won.
So when he scores, I didn't matter whether he was 59 or 29, you know, we were just going to launch on him. I don't think you ever lose that competitive spirit. when you get a lockdown, you realise how much benefit they are to you. It's given me a belief in myself now that I've no longer got this kind of like self-criticism, this lack of confidence to be able to go out and mingle in people. I no longer feel like people are looking at me all the time as if say, oh, he's by himself, because you do. But I don't do that anymore. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. On the first day back when we arrived at 9 o'clock, it was quite surreal. But within half an hour of actually being there, it was like as if we saw him last week, wasn't it? You know? Because the bond is so great to be able to, even though there was like, you know, by the fist or by the elbow, just to have that kind of contact again. It was the start of football arriving back in our lives again after 12 months. There are certain moments in your life where you have tears to your eyes. You can actually feel the emotion running through your body. And I think the first match I went was an October night, 11 years old. And I think on that very first match, I think I actually saw the top of a corner flag and a little bit of green grass. But I fell in love. I fell in love that night, and that was it. That was it, yeah. To watch my team playing in live football, it would bring back so many memories from my childhood. It would be magic.
Thank you. It really does make you think. We don't know where that came from. Still makes me swallow now.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for making me cry in front of 50 people on the internet.
Some of them know me as well. Nobody knew where that came from. It was from the heart, and it has led people to start vocalising about their own mental health challenges. And they're now very open about their own experiences, and all of which helps somebody else. So what about the benefits of participation? Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. I'm not going to read through all of this in the interest of time, but you can see a lot of what we've been talking about. And that all around the country now, there are many groups and associations doing the same thing. And even the FA, and I'm really proud to say that the Staffordshire County Senior League are now getting actively involved. And thank you to Gemma as well, and all the work that's been done with Netball England supporting what we do in Staffordshire, and also Staffordshire Cricket Authority, which is or association, which is now very strongly involved in what we're doing. The phrase, I fell alive again, this has changed my life, is a common theme, and ever more so post-lockdowns, where members have a renewed focus on trying to lead a more positive life. And each week we see new people coming along. None of the challenges have gone away, but our members are now more open and interactive, and there is always a welcoming party for new members that is heartwarming to watch. Someone recently said, together we are better and new life. And that is reflected in our motto for WASSPS, which is all about leading active lives. You'll get these slides, and so you can see most of the benefits. But can we just move on to my last slide now, please? And again, here, I've captured a number of heard phrases and words that are echoed frequently when members talk about what the group is doing to help them to continue to overcome barriers. And I end with a quote from Keith Salmon's video where he says, life's a fragile bargain. It's rescindable at any time by the other party. So if we've got that view, then let's go out and enjoy ourselves. That was said at his funeral very recently, and I have to say it's very poignant to what we're about. So we know it is not that simple, but it does provide hope that we can all work together to support people overcoming barriers. As I said, the sporting activities are pretty much incidental, and we move forward from this in a new and better way. But we need support, because clearly I, my wife and my son can't be the only people who become the shoulders to these people. So it's really nice to be brokering interactions with organisations here today. And there are now 13 or 14 football clubs around the Staffordshire area, and a number of netball ones that are growing too. So thank you very much for listening. I certainly look forward to the breakout session. Thank you very much. Give you some time back.
It's been a really amazing morning, and my absolute thanks to all of the speakers that have made this so engaging, enjoyable and informative. I think what it does say to me is that there's commitment and there's energy around this agenda within the room, and there's more work to do. So after today, if you've got any thoughts about how we might work this, move this forward as a sector, and what you'd like to see from us in terms of future events, please do drop me an email. We will share the presentations from today and the videos and all of the contact details for the speakers if you want to follow up with those things on a one-to-one basis. And all that's left to say is thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Okay, take care all. Bye-bye.